If you asked most Overwatch 2 players what the most important thing to do to win a match is, playing the objective would probably be pretty high on the list. Not doing so would be like a football team winning by not kicking the ball, right? Well, what if it wasn't? Sometimes playing the objective is not always the best option. As the Overwatch League forges on with its 6th season, the best teams in the world are starting to see the light. Pushing the push bot on push might push you farther from the pursuit of perfection. Try saying that 5 times fast. To begin this confusing dance, let's review the win conditions of push. To claim victory in Overwatch 2's newest core game mode, a team must either escort the push bot to the final checkpoint, or hold the lead of the farthest distance pushed once the playtime runs out. Ideally, in every game, you leisurely stroll to the end of the map, win it all, and remove all doubt from the equation. But the latter of the two options is usually what ends up happening. As you progress through push maps, the map geometry tends to favour the opposing side. On top of that, the spawn points naturally also favour the enemy team as well. This inherent defender's advantage makes a full capture on push fairly rare, especially at the highest levels. With that in mind, what's stopping teams from pushing the bot past the natural defences of the enemy team, stepping back and regrouping to utilise map geometry to your advantage? To put it more simply, why should you push the bot past the sight lines of highly defensible positions? Well, the answer is you shouldn't, at least not all the time. So, do you want to see a striker just leave the ball on the pitch and actively run away from it? Enter stage left LA Gladiators and Washington Justice. Esperanza's first checkpoint is placed in a valley with very oppressive high ground, which the LA Gladiators used to their advantage in their recent match against the Washington Justice in the Overwatch League Pro-Am. Immediately after capturing the checkpoint, the Gladiators retreat to the high ground at their backs, leaving the bot in the welcoming hands of the Justice. But with a considerable lead, LA actually stands to gain from abandoning the push bot and repositioning, metaphorically dropping the ball and running away from it. This begs a few questions, but we'll tackle the obvious one first. Why? Why does not playing the objective make sense? Why in the world are you running away from the ball? But remember push's secondary win condition. If a team has the farthest recorded distance pushed, they don't technically have to do anything. They could just sit on their lead and burn the clock down for all the game cares. They're incentivized by the possibility of ending the match outright by reaching the end, but that's usually incredibly difficult for two evenly matched teams. So if the juice ain't worth the squeeze, it's far better to play for position rather than a commanding lead. And it just so happens Esperanza has a very strong plateau to mount. In the case of the Gladiators and the Justice, the former benefits quite heavily from playing from the bridge. Not only does it grant LA the perks of holding the high ground, but it, almost more importantly, limits the surface area of Washington's dive attempts. Tracer has to spend more time traversing the elevation, and once she arrives, she can only attack in one direction. On top of that, Washington's Winston can't just jump into LA's position without paying a hefty toll. There is no cover to play around, and it's likely that after one too many missteps, the Winston could outrange your supports. In an attempt to break the stronghold the Gladiators set up, Justice sends their Hanzo and Anna to play a side angle. In theory, this creates pressure that should corral LA into a more advantageous position for the Justice to capitalise. And while the logic is there, the support sent isn't correct, because what's stopping LA from rushing down the enemy's weak side flank? If you can't match Lucio's speed, you're just trading your queen for the daydream of capturing a few pawns to open up a check. But we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Without going too deep into analysing the Pro-Am group stage games, which, let's face it, might not be quite representative of how teams actually want to play, the question is, has this happened before? Do we have examples of other teams forfeiting objective presence for a stronger map position? And luckily, we do. A strange dual inverse example happened fairly recently in Overwatch Contender's career. In this case, Dreamers are the ones capturing the first checkpoint, however they struggle to leverage it into a teamfight win. Remember push's secondary win condition. Dreamers have the right idea but can't rest on their laurels because they don't have the lead. On the flip side, Team Diamond is not rushed at all. They know how strong a position Esperanza's high ground is, and they know they have the lead, so they opt not to push. They're content burning the clock. This creates a weird game state where both teams are kind of stalemated. No one is attacking because both teams are playing for positional advantage, but one of them has the priority to do so. In this case, Team Diamond is leveraging their lead against Dreamers' optimal position. Slowly, Dreamers realise they can't wait forever, but nearly 2 whole minutes go by before they have to concede their position and reach for an engagement. If this seems familiar, that's because it is. Week 15 of the 2022 Summer Showdown, the Washington Justice pairs off with the San Francisco Shock in what should be a fairly one-sided affair. The Shock are competing for top marks this season, while the Justice are average at best, but nearly 3 minutes go by before the first kill is scored and the objective is pushed at all. Two football teams, no one dribbling the ball, and actively choosing not to. Now there's two things at play here. The The Junker Queen metagame that dominated most of the playtime during the summer of 2022 was focused on posturing and fishing. Junker Queen's jagged blade and commanding shout would be used to catch and punish a target out of position. Sojourn's railgun would be a tool for teams to volley back and forth in attempts to either headshot and kill someone or weaken someone enough for their Genji to quickly finish them off. This game state conditioned teams in a few different ways. One school of thought at the time was to play slowly and fish for your opening kill. The other was to rush teams down, be proactive and force mistakes. Shock vs Justice is technically two examples of the former, but the map exacerbates the problem. Coliseum features a long runway-esque strip of real estate that houses the first fight of each instance on the map, one that quite often lends itself to slower, more thoughtful engagements. Given the meta of the Summer Showdown, neither team feels pressured to give up their resources, so they didn't. Why should either team expend cooldowns and fight through a valley in an attempt to reach the other? Reddit user DrFusion479 calculated the average win percentages of push maps where a team won the first team fight, and found that during the 2022 Overwatch League season, the team that won that first encounter had a 61.8% win rate. This is also undercut by the fact that this win rate is boosted if you're the first team to capture the checkpoint first. Why should either team concede a valuable team fight in the hopes of gaining marginable meterage with the push bot? Again, strikers starring on the pitch in a football Cold War. And funnily enough, this isn't even the first time Shock were fairly creative about it on Coliseum. Nearly 3 months prior, the San Francisco Shock squared off against LA Gladiators during the qualifiers for the kickoff clash. With less than a minute on the clock and a considerable lead, the Shock drop the ball and hightail it back towards the centre of the map. Remember that aforementioned long stretch of land where the push bot begins its torturous task? That's where this final fight will take place. All on the Shock's terms. Trading forward ground for potential flank angles, trading objective pressure for map positioning, and trading total distance pushed for time off the clock. The Shock executes a masterclass in how to play push here. By retreating with limited time left for the Gladiators, the Shock open up 2022's MVP and Rookie of the Year proper to dominate the wings of this last team fight. The Gladiators Tracer has to consider the objective due to Winston's role inherently involving him engaging into the enemy and off of the bot. This means that Kevster can't afford to mark proper on the flank and be in range to touch the objective if needed. And God forbid Kevster and Reyna both vacate the point, then that leaves the Gladiator supports on the bot with very little help should they come under fire. This vulnerability could be the crack for the Shock to pounce on as well, earn some valuable kills and force an immediate retreat from LA. All of this has to be considered in less than 20 seconds, and it all spawns from the counter-intuition of not touching the ball. In all of the examples we've talked about, one team is openly trading something by forfeiting control of the objective, be it map control or a stronger defensive position. Push is becoming more a game of economy than a game of distance. So next time you're strolling along Esperanza, pause for a second, stop pushing constantly, and think, does it make sense to gain an extra few meters, or reinforce our chance to win the next team fight? The answer may not be as simple as you think. And while you're here, drop this video a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more weird and wonderful Overwatch League analysis like this, and check out this video on how the pros are doing their best to get value out of Lifeweaver.